Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video of Third Take. Here, your host, Ruben the Third, and today I'm gonna talk a little bit about kind of like Afghanistan and kind of like our third take regarding this whole issue. Kind of like we're a couple days after kind of the U.S. withdrew, from Afghanistan after a 20-year long presence in the country. We could kind of like look back and see some of the stuff that's been going on. I think we we need to look back and see kind of what are the things that we did wrong and where we can actually like do better. I actually was looking at actually not really looking, I was reading, actually listening to the podcast called Breaking Points with Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty, which I truly recommend you truly listen or watch. They're a really great source of information. That's where I really kind of consume most of my news and kind of like really know what's going on. And really, I like how they present the news and the facts. However, they had someone, I'm not really sure who, but I'm sure one of the recent episodes in which they talk about Afghanistan, in which there was something, a keynote in which they say that something fundamentally kind of like that was wrong or in the understanding of the US when they went into Afghanistan was that they didn't understand really the culture of what's happening. And then they compare this to kind of when Russia entered into another area in the Middle East where they had a cultural anthropologists actually go and kind of study, understand how the social structure was done before they went in and kind of like did their thing, which is kind of like reminded me a little bit of like imperialism in a sense, but realistically, kind of like the way in which you can mitigate like unintended consequences is understanding really the cultural norms and the societal like grouping, how society are divided, what are the roles, between the sexes and the gender, like all this is important to know really to have a good understanding of like if you're going to invade another country, you're trying to do like nation building in a sense. It's important to really understand what are the cultural elements that really distinguish this group of people versus another. So taking that apart, I think that at the end of the day the right decision was made, like. And I know the videos of what we've seen out there are they suck, they're not great, it is. And that's okay, we can acknowledge that, yeah, like how the US left, maybe it wasn't in the best light kind of with it, but we had to go, like, we couldn't, the US could not stay there longer. Like 20 years was too long. Kind of like really the idea was like, okay, we're gonna get Osama bin Laden and peace, we're out. And then kind of like everything just extended to what it really culminated by the end of August, pretty much this week. Um so that's kind of like interesting, kind of really noting that in which you hear a lot of people in the media more so wanting this, having this like hawkish and kind of like warmongering kind of messaging. It's like, oh no, we should stay there, we should go get back our equipments and stuff like that. And then my point of contention and my counterpoint to that is like, hey, like the military knew this was going to happen. Why didn't they start moving stuff sooner? Why leave everything to the last minute, to the end? Like if I think about that, it's like, okay, if you leave everything to the last minute till the end, is you're trying to justify to stay there longer, go back in, you know so like why should we risk our service members to go and fight a pointless war to get what, just a couple of equipments? No, just let that over there. Most of it is kind of like the aerial vehicles, so the planes, the helicopter, all this other stuff. Most of it was, or I think all of it was rendered inoperable. And then secondly, do they really have the skills to use all this? Like sometimes like I hear this argument like, okay, how well trained are these people to really use some of this like weaponry that is more, you need to have more basic knowledge how to operate, how to use it, and more so like you need to know how to fly a plane or a helicopter. Like most of these guys don't have any idea how to fly a helicopter or a plane. They do know how to shoot a gun, but that's much about it. So I just hear kind of like on some of this, like I've been reading some of the articles kind of like just really pushing into like, oh, like it was wrong, how it was done, it was wrong. I was like, ending a war is never pretty. Kind of like, I think there was this idea, kind of like maybe this utopia in a sense, this fallacy that like when the US was going to withdraw with him, it was just going to be like peaches and creams, like nothing happened. Like ending a war is not pretty. These are things that happen. And then I hear some other arguments like, oh, like the women and children, kind of like what's going to happen to them, whatever their people decide. Like it's not the responsibility of the US to be the world police. It's not a responsibility of like the service member of the US to enforce laws that maybe the local people don't want. Like, and I'm not saying that women don't want like have more voice and more choices and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. However, it is up to them to fight for that. Like we cannot, as US citizen, we cannot fight their fight. Like the change has to go from within, from the country within. If it's going to be a long lasting, meaningful change, there has to be a change in paradigm. There has to be a change in the cultural elements from there. And that change only is going to come from within, from the people that compose that culture. And having that an external group, kind of like the US to intervene and kind of do like a cultural change, or like in essence, trying to do like a regime change and kind of bring democracy to Afghanistan, really didn't work, because there was a fundamental flaw in understanding how the Afghan people work, how they operate, how they divide, how their social construct and the cultural elements. What were the cultural values? You know, and then surprisingly, and this is something I learned from Breaking Points, was that the Taliban, they surrender, like they were almost pretty much demolished, almost out of existence, and they surrendered, and they wanted to give bin Laden, and the US Army was like, nah, we'll keep just bombing the shit out of you. And look what happened. Some of this could have been prevented. Like maybe is better decisions have been made. Like, and then people are like, oh, how the Taliban took over Afghanistan that quickly. Well, they used infrastructure that the US government used to create. The roads that the US built, kind of the fuel station, all the other utilities that were used based on like US tax dollars. So in essence, we can say that US taxpayers helped the Taliban take over Afghanistan quicker. Because realistically, that's what it was. They used infrastructure that the US already built, that the US military contractors built. So we facilitated the takeover in a sense. If you think about the how the money of the US taxpayers were used in that country and the infrastructure within, yeah, you can look at it that way, that yeah, we played a part in the fall of Afghanistan. Of course, there were other things, like they had a corrupt government, a pretty much like non-existent military, although they say they were like 300,000 strong or whatever. Realistically, you're seeing more reports where like those were like fallacies. They were more like ghost soldiers. In some instances, and some of the people that the US had as allies were like unsavory characters as well. So there was a lot of I think there were a lot of issues that contributed to kind of the fall of Afghanistan and how quickly it was. And then the other thing too was like, if let's say, like, I don't know was any details, but let's say, like, this is me as a citizen. If the intelligence community told, President Biden that, hey, we think that the local government can handle 18 months before the Taliban takes over. That was the impression. My understanding was that the intelligence data that the US had pointed towards that the Afghan government and the military will be able to at least hold out for some time. That we saw that clearly did not happen. It just took like a couple of days, a week, days, and they just like everything fell. So someone screwed up. So either the intelligence committee has crappy individuals that do not know how to do their job and they cannot collect intelligence, and they were wrong in their information, or they purposely misled President Biden. A third option could be that Biden misled us and they had the correct intelligence. Who knows? But those are the three possibilities that me, as a citizen of the United States, I think of them like, well, this could be the three things, like, because there's just, raw miscommunication is easy to throw people under the bus, but I'm like, what are the facts? What is it that actually happened? Like, if you as an intelligence community have the correct information and you do not give that information to the messenger, then that is an issue. Like, where was the mismatch? Where was the disconnect in communication? I think like that is what we need to know. Where, like, do we have the appropriate assets and the appropriate personnel to determine, like, to really make the job well and to really have good intelligence information? Or, were we, did they want to mislead the US people, the American citizen, the United States citizen? I don't want to say American because American is from the top of Canada to the southernmost part of like Argentina to La Tierra del Fuego. So there's all the Americas. So like they just lied to the US citizens. So what is it? And I know the images are hard to see. Don't get me wrong, they're not cool. They're hard to see, but we had to go. Could the retreat have been better? Yes. I think we can argue that there were some things that could have been done better. I think that's a fair criticism, to make. But to expect like, oh, like roses, like peaches and cream, all happy, hugs and kisses after ending a war, like that is unrealistic. I think if that happened, that would be more like a wow thing, more so than something that most people will be expecting. So that's kind of like where I'm at, kind of regarding this. Is like, I am of the belief, and I think most of the people in the US would agree with me, that we had to go. Like, we just couldn't be having this forever war. Like, we couldn't have our servicemen and women just being there just for like political pawns, really, and just to fulfill just like military contractors and make their pockets more full. Like, no, like these are people. These are people with family, with mom, with dads, with like husbands and wives, mothers and fathers. These are people. They have their histories. They have their families, like, and we're just like, oh no, just let's go back, and like some people I see, no, no, we can just send more troops to, like, let's just, occupy some area just until we can get our stuff back. You just want to put US citizen lives at risk just for the fun of it, just for the hell of it. Like, no, these are human beings, like, and not only are it's just human beings or service member, also the civilians, the Afghanistan civilians that have died from the drone strikes and all these other attacks that the US has done as well. Like there's a fair share of like bad actions from both sides. And I think like you get to a point in which you're like, like you just have to swallow your pride and be like, hey, like we just have to stop. Like, it's done. Like, we're done. Like it is what it is. We need to be done. You check your enemy's hands. So like, we're done. Peace out. One piece. We're done. And that's it. Because the cost is just keeping sacrificing lives. So the sacrifice is going to be bigger down the road if we don't stop, the action now. So I think that's what I really want to, like, I think that for me, really, there is the human cost. It's like, how many people are we going to keep sacrificing? Like, how many for what? Exactly what are we going to gain? What would the gain in this past 20 years? Nothing. Nothing was gained, just death. Death and just millionaires getting their pockets more full. That's the only thing that was gained. A bunch of sacrifice for nothing, because there's nothing to be done. There was no mission after just attacking. Just after getting Bin Laden. Then after that, what? Sadly, wasted human lives. Wasted human lives for something that had no purpose, just for the sake of just being there and generating revenues for US contractors. That was it. That was the only purpose that Afghanistan served. Once the objective was done, any point after that was just a waste of taxpayer money and human capital. people that could have done great things in this country, sacrificed for nothing. So, you know, it is what it is. I just wanted to give you, my two takes on this. Like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about everything, so there's a bit of that as well. I think it's important, to have these conversations as well and be like, hey, like, different perspective from this, because I think that if you go to mainstream media, you're going to be bombarded with like, no, we need to go back and attack, and kind of like this warmongering stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to keep sacrificing human lives for this. If they want to go, you can sacrifice your kids, and you can go and fight over there. You're more than happy to go build your own company, your mercenary group, and go and do your shit. I do not care, but I don't want to keep sacrificing innocent people, innocent soldiers, for just for something that has real no merit in it. There's no merit, there's nothing to gain, just to beat up your chest like a gorilla. Nah, it's not worth it. All right, fam. Hope you have a great day. Yo, take care.